Well, here at the Aussie Wire, we are expanding and growing as quickly as we reasonably can, and we're incredibly excited right here on the first live episode of 2024 to be introducing our North American correspondent. This is someone that I met at ARC. She absolutely blew away the entire team, the leadership team, as well as the rest of the team that work with us. We reached out to her and were thrilled when she said, hey, yes, I'll be your North America correspondent and bring some of the madness, the craziness. The North Americans, honestly, in the last couple of years, I feel like they've lost their minds. I hope the one we're about to talk to has managed to keep her sanity and is going to keep us apprised of everything that goes on. It is Julie Hartman. Julie, welcome to the Aussie Wire, and thank you so much for coming on.
Topher, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be joining you in this position. And I promise you, I'm one of the few sane ones here in North America. But hey, there are a few insane people down under too.
Look, no argument from me, no argument from me. But I've got to say, that combination of Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden just seems to be a bit of a special, just a special leadership group you've got up there. What in the world? What are they putting in the water? Is this just Flint, Michigan water is getting everywhere else now as well?
Who the heck knows? I mean, there's all this stuff coming across our border as we're talking about. Maybe they're infecting the water with some crazy stuff. I would love to blame it on that. This craziness is a homegrown ideology, sadly.
Yeah, that's the problem, and same with my former home state of Victoria. The problem is us. Look, let's dive into some of this news out of North America that you've kindly brought to our attention. Look, I've got to be honest, I found it a little bit hard to get excited about this story at first when it broke a couple of weeks ago. And yet the more I dove into it and the more you explained to me, the more I went, hang on, this is quite strange here. For those that don't know what's going on, this is Claudine Gay. She was the president of Harvard. She has been sort of forced to resign. But it's weird, it's messy. Bring us up to speed for anyone that doesn't know what's going on here.
Yes, I should also add, as I'm analyzing this story, I graduated from Harvard about a year and a half ago. I'm the class of 2022. So I have a special connection to this story. But yes, for those who are unaware, Claudine Gay was made the 30th president of Harvard on September 29th, 2023. I think she was formally brought in as the president sometime in the summer, but her inauguration date was September 29th. Now, that is 8 days before the October 7th terrorist attack in Israel. So I hope that Miss Gay enjoyed those 8 days of being the president of Harvard, because that was the only time of calm for her. Once the October 7th atrocities happened, it was all downhill there for her as all hell broke loose on Harvard's campus and on other college campuses all around the country. I'm sure you have seen videos of students chanting Intifada, globalize the Intifada. Sadly, on Harvard's campus, there were some students holding Hamas flags. There were videos of students intimidating their Jewish classmates, blocking them from going to class. And Harvard barely said anything about it. It took them a few days to release a statement about October 7th. Many deemed it to be mealy-mouthed and too little too late. And on top of that, just a few days after the October 7th massacre, 34 student organizations at Harvard signed a petition in which they said that the Israeli, quote, regime is entirely responsible for the terrorist attack that happened by Hamas against them. So that was kind of the first part of the story, where Harvard, and specifically President Claudine Gay, was not seen as being vociferous enough in her condemnation of this anti-Semitism on campus. Then what came next was all of these allegations of plagiarism that Miss Gay had apparently improperly cited the work of many, many different scholars, including one scholar, Dr. Carol Swain, who I actually interviewed on my show. And then I think the third kind of and final nail in the coffin were those congressional hearings when the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn went to the United States Congress to explain the surge of anti-Semitism on their campus. And that's when we saw the viral video of Miss Gay saying, well, calling for the genocide of Jews on our campus depends on the context. And then, of course, she was forced to resign.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary thing. And I can't help but feel like these universities are beginning to get a taste of their own medicine. They, of course, have been a breeding ground for a lot of these sorts of ideas over the years, and many people have been harmed by the sorts of ideas that they've allowed to grow, whether it comes down to socially progressive ideas such as transgenderism and critical race theory and these sorts of things. Now it seems like these things are turning on they're biting the hand that fed them. You mentioned there the issue of the plagiarism. This has been called a conservative attack on Claudine Gay. Is there real substance to these allegations of plagiarism? And why should we care? Why did this become international news? Why are we halfway around the world talking about it now? Why is this such a big story?
Well, it is such a big story because Harvard is seen as the top university, not just in the United States, but all around the world. I mean, that name has such recognition. That's why I wanted to go to that school, because I wanted all of the opportunities, and I will admit the prestige of the name that came with it. And now that name is being tarnished. And I think it's kind of a fascinating thing to people, because they look and they go, oh, an institution like Harvard would never elevate someone to become the president who plagiarized. And these are not just one or two accusations of plagiarism. These are a dozen. Some are even saying several dozen accusations of plagiarism. So I think it's a fascinating spectacle, and it indicates that many of these once esteemed institutions, and I'm not just talking about universities and colleges, I'm talking about businesses, I'm talking about departments here in our government. These once esteemed institutions have been infected by the diversity, equity, and inclusion rot, and now they are no longer carrying the kind of pedigree that they once enjoyed. So I think it's indicative of a broader problem that people are starting to catch on to.
One of the things I love about American politics is that it seems to spawn and generate a particularly high class of meme. I'm a big fan of meme wars. I follow a lot of meme pages. I saw this one come out with regard to the Claudine Gay saga, plagiarism accusations, of course, the 3 keys to success. And in case you're watching on your phone and you can't see what those keys are, it is Control-C, Control-V, Control-Copy, Control-Paste by Claudine Gay. I do appreciate that about Americans and your politics. Now, you brought this to my attention. This was Claudine Gay's attempt to smooth everything over, to make it okay. And it went just about as well as that congressional hearing you mentioned a moment ago.
Oh my gosh, this New York Times article was so, it was both shocking and not shocking, really. So here's what happened. So Miss Gay resigned officially on January 2nd. And in the email that she sent to the Harvard community, I, as an alum, received that email. She said, basically, out of my love for Harvard, I'm going to resign because in this moment of turmoil, I want the focus to be on the institution as opposed to an individual.
Sure.
And so then, you read that first paragraph and you go, okay, well, she's going to take responsibility for, not condemning quickly enough the 37 student organizations, that despicable letter. She's going to take responsibility for the congressional hearing. She's going to take responsibility for the plagiarism that she engaged in. And no, she didn't take any responsibility in that email. The Harvard Corporation followed up with a second email in which they said, yes, Miss Gay has made some mishaps. That was their word, mishaps. But, she's been a wonderful leader. And so then when we all saw this New York Times piece, we go, okay, is she going to finally take responsibility? And no, she doubled down. Let's look, if you don't mind, at the first part of that New York Times piece. So here she is announcing, giving background to everyone. And by the way, the title of the piece is "What Happened at Harvard is Bigger Than Me." Okay. So she's basically saying that what happened to her is part of a greater campaign. So she starts off here with talking about accusations of racism and racist threats that have been hurled towards her. My inbox has been flooded with invective, including death threats. I've been called the N-word more times than I care to count. Okay, look, if that happened to her, I will be the first one to say that is despicable.
Yeah, it's not okay.
But of course, but it just seems a little bit not the point. And it seems a little bit like she might be throwing out these accusations of racism to distract from the greater scandal, which is really the fact that she plagiarized and she did not, handle the anti-Semitism correctly. So then she goes on and she says that demagogues are seizing focusing on an opportunity to weaponize her presidency. I'm reading from here. I have to quote Topher lest I fall into the Claudine Gay trap. I'm quoting. Yes, to further weaponize my presidency in their campaign to undermine the ideals animating Harvard since its founding. Okay. She goes on to say that there is, quote, a broader war to unravel public faith in pillars of American society. So you can kind of get the undertone here, right? She's saying essentially, and again, I want to make it clear that what I'm about to say, these are not her exact words. This is what I am judging to be the undertone. What I'm judging to be the undertone is I'm a Black woman. These racist demagogues in this society hate people like me, and they are launching an all-out campaign to knock me off of my perch because I'm a Black woman.
Yeah.
And then she continues and she starts talking about the October 7th atrocity and the aftermath at Harvard. She says, yes, I made mistakes. In my initial response to the atrocities of October 7th, I should have stated more forcefully what all people of good conscience know. And then she says, Hamas is a terrorist organization and that she wants to protect Jewish students. But then she says, I neglected to clearly articulate, at a congressional hearing last month, I fell into a well-laid trap. Ms. Gay, that was not a well-laid trap. Congresswoman Stefanik, who was the one questioning, gave her and the other college presidents several opportunities to clarify their position. You heard Congresswoman Stefanik, Representative Stefanik. She said, I'm going to ask one more time. I'm going to give you one more opportunity.
Yeah.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews on your campus violate your bullying and harassment codes? This was not a trap.
Yeah.
Claudine Gay made a mistake here. And then the final thing I will show you just to further illustrate how there is no responsibility for her actions. She goes on to address the allegations of plagiarism. And the word she uses is that she duplicated other scholars' language. And so the final point I'll make here is that if Claudine Gay had taken full responsibility for her actions, starting with that student organization, the letter signed by the student organization, then with the congressional hearings, then with the plagiarism, if she had resigned gracefully in taking responsibility, I think that all of us would have some respect for her.
Sure.
But she is doubling down. She is refusing to take responsibility. And that is showing why she should have never been the president of Harvard, because a kind of person that doesn't take responsibility for their mistakes is not a leader.
It's an extraordinary thing. And the bigger issue here from my perspective is not actually Claudine Gay. There's a truism. It's one of those things that's been used so many times that it's almost useless, and yet it is still true, that the revolution always eats its own. And in so many cases, the revolution has taken place on university campuses. And I find it fascinating now that increasingly around the world, Claudine Gay just being one example of many, the actions of their own students are now beginning to eat the faculty that made those students possible. We're beginning to watch this revolution, this cultural revolution on universities begin to eat their own. And for me, that's always a sign that change is coming, and hopefully change for the better. But of course, there is no guarantee about that. Well, Julie, we had some other stories lined up for today, but that's actually all we've got time for this particular episode. So we're going to have to get you back on very, very shortly to continue to wrap our minds around some of the madness that's going on in the US, why it matters and how it potentially affects us here in Australia. But of course, we have viewers all around the world as well. Julie Hartman, before I let you go, how can people find you if they want to find your work that's not on the Aussie Wire? Where would they look?
They would go to the Julie Hartman YouTube channel. They can catch there my show, Timeless with Julie Hartman, as well as my show with Dennis Prager called Dennis and Julie. And you can also follow me on Instagram and X at Julie R. Hartman. Thank you so much, Topher. It's been great to analyze these news stories with you, if not a little depressing.
It can be sometimes, but hey, we've got to keep across what's happening. And you know what? I think there's a lot of hope for the future. I'm actually a very optimistic person. I know from talking to you that you are too. And I think we've got a great future ahead of us, just with some speed bumps between now and then. For now, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.